Welcome to the Accounts Payable Interface Overview training session. This module holds the records of vendors and invoices used at your property and all properties managed by your management company. This training session will focus on typical uses by an on-site property manager. In AP, you are able to view lists of vendors in several ways, view lists of open invoices in several ways, find, add, and edit vendors, enter invoices, and print reports. Let's discuss the group sidebar vendor views first. List view. This view has a search bar above the main grid. Type in the first few letters of the suspected vendor name and press the Enter key. The grid will fill with a list of all matching vendors. Since MultiSite can share vendors with all properties, this view will display all vendors matching the letters you typed in the search box. I will type the letters Bush and press Enter. The grid fills with matching vendor names. Get focus on the last vendor in the list. I'm going to use my mouse. Notice the note grid underneath the main grid. This vendor has 2 notes. Now let's look at the right-click menu. Let's explore 2 interesting menu items on this menu, AP History and Pay History. First, AP History. As you would expect, the main grid displays all invoices within our filtered date range. You will be most interested in the last 2 columns on the right, the check date and the check number. If you want to view the invoice, just double-click on the invoice and it will display. I'm not going to do that right now just to save training time. We'll see plenty of it more later. Next, Pay History. No surprise, the grid fills with a list of checks. You will not be able to double-click on this view and see an invoice because checks can pay off, and usually do, many invoices. Since we have focus on a vendor, Bushmaster, look over at the last 3 icons in the vendor views. As you know, the right-click menu has the most frequently clicked items in this list. See the last 2 right-clicks we just made, AP History and Pay History? Let's explore the third one from the bottom there, the Edit Vendor category. A vendor may have more than one category. Categories are a way to cross-reference vendors. You may know all of your vendors' abilities, but someone filling in for you or a new assistant may not, and they certainly don't know at the home office. And categories make for quick searching and nice breaks in some reports. I will add subcontractor and landscaping to this vendor. All I have to do is touch them and they'll jump over to the right. Now I'm going to save and then press the Close button. Now let's click on the Site View icon over on the left. Site View icon will open up a tree with all properties that you have rights to see. Click on a vendor and then click the plus sign to display the vendors that have worked at that property. Now click on a vendor and the vendor 2-column grid will display on the main grid, and the underneath the 2-column grid will be the notes. This grid has the same right clicks as the other main grid did, where you can view AP history and payment history. Now let's change the group sidebar groups to look at open AP views. I'm going to click on by site. Just like in the previous click, the tree view will be filled with properties which you have rights to. I'm going to click on bike properties. The main grid fills with all outstanding invoices. My personal screen resolution is sized so that I cannot see all of the columns in this grid. I'd like to show you a handy way to hide and expose the tree view so that you can see more columns. See the panel just above the main grid, the gray one? It says Bike Apartments, and there's a picture of a world there, a globe. Click on that anywhere and the tree will shrink. Now that exposes the last column over there where it shows Authorized. If I were to click on it again, tree comes back to the width that I had saved it at before. I'm going to click on it again. Now I can see which invoices have been authorized. Normally, the property manager does not authorize invoices and do not have security rights to authorize the invoices. Your company may be different. Authorization is predominantly done by regional managers and/or home office personnel. Well, it's finally time to enter an invoice. I know you've been waiting for it. We're going to click on the group sidebar Invoices and then click New. I'm not going to really discuss the icons on the sidebar over to your left. They seem pretty self-evident, but I will demonstrate the invoice entry procedure. Now in this form, it is definitely best to use your keyboard more than your mouse. When the form opens as it has just done, your cursor will be in the site number field. That's right, site number. Most areas in MultiSite you enter the complex code, but in the AP module the site number is used exclusively. I'm going to enter the number 276 and press enter. Our cursor is now in the vendor ID field. How are you to remember all of those vendor IDs? Well, there's two ways to retrieve a vendor ID. Press the enter or tab key and the form recognizes that the field is empty and takes a wild guess that you would like to open the vendor search form, which it does. The vendor search form allows you to search by entering the first few letters of vendor name, just like on the main grid of the AP module and so many other places in MultiSite. I'm going to type Bush. I press enter. Now, I can use my mouse or I can hit the tab key and use the down arrow key twice, and there I am on Bush Ranger. I press the enter key and I'm back at the invoice. Now I am in the invoice number field. The next three fields are self-explanatory and I will just enter them. I could have just entered an invoice number here, couldn't I? The description field came up with the last description that I had entered in for this vendor at this property. And this will also be used, the item grid down below, and it will pre-fill with the description. You can always overwrite the description. I'm going to press the tab key and I go right to the building number. It has a drop down list. I'm going to skip that. I go to the unit next. The list of units are in there also. I could pick a unit like this. The job code field is rarely used, but it can be used for your accounting department to separate expenses for a certain category. Like you might have a fire unit and they might give you a job number or a job code to put in there. The account field that we're in now is of great interest to your accounting department and to your property owners. It's very important that you break down an invoice in as much detail as your management company instructs you to break down, that is. If your management company has not provided you with a cheat sheet of commonly used general ledger account numbers, please ask them for a preferred list of accounts. The list of account numbers contains all general ledger account numbers used for this property. MultiSite helps you out by floating to the top of those account numbers the account numbers used on the previous invoice for this vendor at this property. I'm going to type in the account number and press tab. I'm going to leave the description alone and press tab to the debit column. I'm going to enter in $1,200. That matches the invoice amount up above. If I were to enter more line items, I would press the tab key a couple of times to get down to the next line, and I would continue on adding lines until I had finished breaking out the detail that was required for this invoice. When it's time to save this invoice, just press the page down key. The page down key saved the invoice and printed a voucher and advances to a new invoice. Your cursor is in the site number field and you're all set to enter for the next invoice. When you are done entering the invoices, retrieve the invoice vouchers from your printer and staple them on top of each invoice entered. Then place them in an envelope or folder to be transferred to your regional or home office for approval and payment. I'm going to close this invoice. After you close the invoices, We're now back at the main grid. The invoice we just entered probably is not in the grid. The screen is not refreshed. In this training session, we only entered one invoice, but normally you will save up invoices until you have a few to enter. MultiSite is simply saving CPU time and not trying to display the main grid. After all, she does not know what you want to do next anyway. You'll have to click on an icon to perform your next task. Our next task to demonstrate is how to edit an invoice. There are two ways to edit an invoice after getting focus on an invoice. You can just get focus on an invoice and double click it, or you can click the edit invoice icon on the sidebar. Both of those ways will open up the invoice for you to edit. Now you'll be able to edit it just as long as it hasn't been paid off. The last task I'm going to show you is how to reprint the invoice. Say your printer jammed or something. I get focus on the invoice and then I right click print invoice. Of course, the other way is to open up the invoice and use an icon in there, or go down to the grid and hit page down. But this is the quickest way. There are many more features to learn and use in the AP module. Our AP manual describes most of those features. If you've not already done so, print out the manual and study it every night, won't you? Carry it with you everywhere you go. Then, Grasshopper, you will be a good MultiSite user. I would like to personally thank you for taking the time to view this training session. I know it is hard to watch these without getting distracted. When you watch this video again or any others, please take note of the video player control buttons. They are sometimes located at different parts of the screen. This toolbar allows you to fast forward, pause, reverse, or replay parts of the video that you want to review or skip. Thank you again and have a nice day.